Hey guys, happy Thursday. I hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, it's tea time at noon. And today I have a coffee. So coffee because I didn't sleep good enough and I need a little kick. More of a kick than I already have within myself, I guess. But I hope your guys' week is going well. I am so excited to be here today doing tea time because my longtime friend and childhood friend is going to join me on a tea time where we're going to be talking about soul purpose and everything that comes with it in a way, everything in between, and our own experiences with it, and so much more. And she's on here now. Hey, Adriana. Yes, let's do this. Before I add her, and as I wait for other people to show up, let me share a really quick A Course in Miracles, it's the book, quote, and I love this quote. So it's about perception, and I'm sure some of you guys have seen it already on my page, but this is how it goes. Perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. Yeah, just like the definition of perception. So sit with that for a moment, sit with it during our tea time, sit with it afterwards. It's something that I read and that I'm still sitting with it, and I just really, really love it. So let me add Adriana. Let's see. Okay, let's see.
Hi,
Hey!
how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm great this morning.
Oh, I love your necklace.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, I love green. It's a cross, huh?
Yes.
Oh, I like it.
Mm-hmm. It's
That's good.
like we grew up Catholic, and this is kind of something that my boyfriend taught me, like how we're supposed to carry our cross, kind of, and like it's just like a reminder that, well, at least for me, it's kind of a reminder, like what feels like a burden is actually part of like my calling. So it's a little intertwined. But
Mm.
jade, it's also like it's wrapped in jade. So I love it because it's like abundant, it's love, it's like just
Aw.
all of that.
I think green too is like the heart chakra, huh?
Green, no, it's actually red, I think.
Yeah?
I think
Okay.
so. I might be wrong though. I'm still learning on chakras and stuff.
But that's still a sweet message though, because it's a reminder. You
Yeah.
know? I used to have like little Buddha and I lost it, but for me it was a reminder of like, hey, everything's within and like you're not
Yes.
alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a little like so could we start with like just like a calming meditation and
Yeah.
kind of get everyone to engage with us right now?
Yeah.
So you lead because you're the pro.
Oh, I was gonna say, do you wanna lead?
No, you lead.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. Hey guys, welcome to tea time. Okay, so we're gonna do a meditation. Let me put this down. And you said you're feeling a little what?
I'm just feeling a little like too excited, so I kind of just want to bring down the energy a bit.
Okay, let's do this. So let's close our eyes. And it looks like you're already comfortable where you're at. So whoever's watching, get comfortable and close your eyes. And let's bring our awareness to our breath and to the present moment and to where we're sitting at. It can be on the couch, on a chair, on the floor. And again, just bringing the awareness to our breath, being mindful of how we're breathing, and not trying to change anything by making our breath go faster or slower, just being aware of how your breath goes in and how your breath goes out. And if it helps, as you're breathing in, you can tell yourself, I breathe in. And when you breathe out, you can tell yourself, I breathe out. I breathe in. I breathe out. I breathe in. I breathe out. I breathe in. I breathe out. And as we have our eyes closed, maybe we can shake our hands, shake our arms, kind of releasing any energy, any sporadic, any stress, any tense energy. And slowly just move your hands up and shake. And then moving your hands back down. And just putting your hands back to where they were. And let's take a deep breath in. And release. And let's do that 2 more times. Deep breath in. And release. And 1 more time. Deep breath in through your nose. And release through your mouth. And whenever you're ready, you can open up your eyes wherever you're at. So, yay. And then I always do this. I think
I know, I'm like,
Juliana.
that's the one.
Like, put your hands together and just, what is this called?
I'm like,
Rub them.
Participate in one of her guided meditations, and you'll know what this is. Like, I'm not gonna let her spill like what this is until you participate in one of her meditations, because it's game
So
changer.
you'll feel it, and then they can tell us. It's like, get back to me. Tell me how you feel.
Right. Like that's your incentive. Like, you want to know what this is? This is find out.
So you got to do the practice to find out.
Right. Okay.
That's a good.
I'm gonna be like snacking while you initiate, because I haven't had breakfast.
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's been
totally go for it.
Okay.
This is why I like doing lives. It's like whatever comes up, whatever you're eating, shit hits the fan. Like, you're gonna watch it live.
You know,
my niece is in the other room, right, when I do tea times, and I'm like, hey, if you need anything, just come in. Like, just tell me. Like, I'll be right with you, and people are gonna know what's up. So I'm so excited. I'm always excited to talk to you. And we had a conversation last night, and it was so heartfelt. Like, I took a shower afterwards, and I didn't, like, what we talked about, I didn't realize, like, how touching it was. And I started tearing up in the bathroom, and I was like, oh, okay, like, it's time for me to release as I'm showering. And it felt so good. Felt so good.
For me, I got triple confirmation about what we were talking about. Because I told you that I met with somebody, like, I made a new connection yesterday, and we were talking about the subject, and she told me, like, you know what, like, when you graduate to like the next frequency, you know, inevitably you're just not going to resonate with some people, and you're gonna resonate so much harder with like others, you know. And it's like, me and you have like done this in our lifetime. Like, we've known each other since you were how much older than me?
I think maybe 2 or 3.
Okay, I'm 24.
Right?
I'm 24.
Oh, I'm 28. Yeah,
okay,
4
you're 3 years older. So it's like, you've always been like older than me, but it's like, even throughout like just the history of our life, we've always done this, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and then yesterday you shared the same message with me, like don't stress it. Like, it's like, at a different frequency, you're gonna gravitate, and you're gonna like you're gonna gravitate, and you're also gonna have people like gravitate towards you more like easily, who are like vibing on your level right now, you know?
Yeah.
And then I pay attention to the Hood Healer. I don't know if you've heard of her or if you've
The
seen
Hood Healer? No.
her. And
Okay.
she like that, she was a triple confirmation this morning. She posted like, this is the season where lower vibrational friendships and relationships, or just
Mm,
relationships altogether, like are deteriorating. Like if you've
okay.
elevated like on a frequency level,
Um,
anyone else who isn't doing that, it's like those are just inevitably gonna like.
yeah, like it kind of just it does it on its own too. It just
Right,
happens. It
right,
totally happens.
right.
And even with that too, it's like I always have this like such a strong like strong ass conviction with any type of relationships. Like when relationships don't work out, now there's so much more room for like other relationships to come through. And like those relationships, if you're in a higher frequency, if you're doing the work,
Hmm.
like they're gonna be so much deeper than the ones you've had before.
Right,
You know, or like the craving is there, and it's like, okay, like let me do more of my own work and then have this manifested. And it just comes through, you
it's
know?
like it's like how I told you at the meditation like 2 weeks ago.
Um,
I had an epiphany. I'm like, I'm stressed so much lately that I'm getting these frown lines and I don't like it. But what's it called? Me. So when I told you at the meditation, I've had an epiphany. Like, I've always had acquaintances, right?
um,
Acquaintances that were somehow founded through like faith and spirituality.
mm,
Like whether
okay.
it was people I met at the church, like at my church when I was younger, people
Um,
who just get the spiritual talk and the depth. But it's like it was always people that I considered like an acquaintance.
yeah.
Those people have been like my it people this whole year, and I'm
Yeah,
like
that's awesome.
it's just helped me, and I know I've helped them. And like it's like the reciprocity is so big.
Yeah. I feel like in those relationships, it's like sometimes you switch off from being a teacher and a student. But
It's
nonetheless, like both of you guys are
awesome,
teachers, both of you guys are teachers. It's just in different seasons in our lives. And
right?
sometimes it's just like in one talk,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I think even last night in our talk, it was like you were teaching me stuff and I was a student. And then I was sharing, I was teaching you something and you were the student. So it's like, and
It's
it's like I love those conversations. And I think I mentioned it when we were like getting off the phone. Like I love these type of conversations.
right. No, absolutely. And I think it's like I can recognize like I come from a background where keeping up with appearances was
Mm,
like a prominent message, and talking about like just what like matters, you know, like
uh-huh.
keeping front, like really like. And I talk about this deeply with like my boyfriend. I feel so weird calling him boyfriend because it feels deeper than boyfriend, but he's not necessarily my husband. But like we're in
It's
we're
like after boyfriend and before husband.
but it's like I told him, I was like, I come from a background that like everyone is so fake that like
Mm,
realness was never like applauded, and if you were
mm,
real, it was like, why are you doing that? You get
yeah.
what I'm saying?
It's like you got in trouble for being authentic. Like you got in
Right.
trouble for like sharing truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
took me like years to because and it's like now before I say that, like you just said, it's like you got in trouble for being authentic, right? Like when we're children,
Yeah.
we like children speak the truth. Like you
Yeah.
like a little
Yeah.
kid thinks you ugly, they're gonna be like, you ugly.
You're
You know
ugly.
what I'm saying? Like if a little kid doesn't understand, like we don't give enough credit to children for their natural like boundaries and like just like
Yeah.
their young understanding, you know, that it's like when something feels off to a kid, we will literally like so many of like the adults, right, will literally shut them up because they're
Mhm.
kids, and like
Yeah.
forgetting that like kids are the most tapped in, like
They're so intuitive.
they're so intuitive. So it's like
Yeah.
after years of like I was a super like why, kid? Like, okay, you want to discipline me, but why? Okay, this is
Oh,
abuse,
yeah.
but why? Like,
Oh, and it's like in our background of like Hispanic and the whole religion, it's like you don't
you don't
question
question.
why.
I am your mom.
Like,
I am your dad. I said that. Like,
yeah.
and that goes, right?
Hmm.
So it's like,
It's, going a little bit on that too. It's like there was also like discipline in terms of like if we were to ask why. Like we would get in trouble for asking why.
what do you mean why?
Yeah. Like, why are you questioning me? Like,
Right.
slap.
And
It's like,
so, like, if your entire childhood you got punished for being curious, like, or adults rather than being humble enough to tell you as a child, like, I don't know the answer to that. They come up with lies to coddle you, right?
um,
It's like, not only does that rate, like, it makes you, it teaches you, like, one, to not question anything. And by the time you get to an age and you realize like you've been deceived your entire like childhood, it's like that is a very traumatic like realization and then experience for the following years, because it's like, well, how the fuck do I get back to asking questions? Like, how do I regain the courage to be curious about life again?
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like curious, like, and just, yes,
Yeah. Yeah. Like growing up for me, it was very much like people pleasing. So I think for me, it's like I've always been curious as a kid. And I think I broke boundaries as a kid. But I think that part of like sharing truth or just speaking out loud, my mom and I were just talking about it the other day because she was like, oh, like, do you remember when like this couple came over with their kid? And I was like, no. And she was like, you were like 4. And I'm like, no, I don't remember that? And she was like, and the mom mentioned like, oh, mi hijo está aquí, tiene 4 años. It's your new boyfriend. And my response, and to translate in English, it's like my mom's friend was like, I have a kid, he's 4 years old, it's your new boyfriend. And my response to it was like, no, he's ugly, he has big ears. And yeah, and my mom was like, oh my god, like you would always say like the darnest things. And
mm-hmm.
for me growing up was like, oh, I'm just sharing observations, but I'm getting in trouble for it. Like,
Right.
why are you talking? Like, stay quiet. Like, shut up. Like there'd be like a consequence for doing that.
Right.
And I think it was, for me growing up, it was like pleasing other people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you stay quiet and whatever they say, just say yes to. And this last year, like going back into the like that space of dating, I realized that growing up, my parents would always be like, "Go say hi, go hug them," like even if I didn't want to. But
Mm-hmm.
it was like I was forced to because it's like the kind thing to do or like the nice thing to do.
The nice thing
And
to do, not the
exactly,
kind thing. It's the nice thing. And niceness and kindness are two
two totally different
different
things.
things.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And then this like past like when was it? Like when I started going back into like the dating pool,
mm-hmm.
I saw myself like this dude was trying to hug me and cuddle me. And I felt so uncomfortable, but I also felt like I had to be there and like just accept it. And that's
No,
when I realized like, oh shit, like hold on, I don't have to. Like, where did I get this idea that I have to stick it out or be uncomfortable and still say yes to it?
right.
You know?
I completely agree. Um, and it's just, it's like the weirdest feeling, because choosing to honor your own boundaries feels like the most selfish, like, and with a negative connotation, like the most selfish thing to do when you've been taught, whether like because it was a message that was verbally sent out by your parents or simply by
Yeah.
observing the adults in your life constantly betray their own boundaries for the sake
Yeah.
of being nice, for the sake of keeping face. And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
um and so it's like unlearning all of that is just really, like, it takes time. It
It
takes a
does.
lot of time.
Yeah. The boundary part was that's something too that we could totally talk about when like the soul purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole boundary setting, it's like I got to experience the last couple of years how much chaos in a way that was creating within my family because they weren't okay with my nose or they weren't okay with me setting boundaries and they thought that I wasn't a good daughter or they thought that like I didn't care or they thought that like they weren't priority.
Right.
And it took time for me to own up or to be in that space of like, you know what, I'm going to say no, or I'm going to put my boundary down, but it does not mean that I'm a bad person. It does not mean that I'm a bad daughter. Like, it
Mhm.
does not mean that my family is not a priority.
Right.
But it's crazy because it's one thing to like think it and kind of read about it and like do more research on it, but it's a whole other thing to like actually feel it in your body and do the work.
No, absolutely.
Like, yeah.
I feel to add to the whole what you just mentioned about like I'm not a bad person for this, right? I feel like that was a really big lesson for me in this last year.
Um,
And it was a lesson that I was learning within like my own life, but it was also something that I was observing so many people struggle with. Because like we like for yourself, right? The moment you advocate for yourself, because people look at you like you're this, like, where is all this audacity coming from? You know? And they're
yeah.
like, no, I'm used to breaking, like, and pushing you to like break your own boundaries. Um, and it's funny because like as I was learning that lesson in the last year, I was constantly telling like one of like a close coworker at the time, you know, we were kind of going through like similar themes, and I told him, I was like, you know what, like we are not our mistakes, right? But we're also not our greatest achievement, you know?
Oh yeah.
Like we are
Oh
not
yeah. Because
we
it's
are
like,
not like all bad, and we're not all good. Like we are, and the
yeah.
moment that we release ourselves from these mental frameworks, or like where you constantly are telling yourself like I'm a good person, I'm a good person, I'm a good person, like you repeating yourself, all of that is going to make the times that you make a mistake and possibly hurt somebody, right? Because it's like we're human, like
It's
we are not like the heroes in everybody's story. Like inevitably at some point, like we're gonna hurt somebody. But
yeah.
but if you're constantly telling yourself that you're a good person, you'll never be able to admit to yourself like you are actually the villain in somebody else's story right now. And in the same way that like if maybe you've had a history of like maybe not being someone that you yourself are proud of, and you saw yourself or you as the bad person, or somebody constantly was telling you you're the bad person, like you're also not that. Because it's like the moment that you start switching up your life and you start making like positive changes, and you know that you're affecting people in a positive way now in comparison to maybe like the damage that you caused in the past, like you'll never allow yourself to recognize like your growth, because you won't get yourself out of the mental framework of like I'm this bad person who has hurt people or has done bad things in the past. And so like you like the yin yang that you have up there, I asked my one of my dear friends like to paint that for Christmas for me. And it's a constant reminder, like we are not all good and we're not all bad. Like we're human. Like we're supposed to I think we're supposed to play the villain in people's lives at times. Like obviously don't be a conscious villain, like that's fucked up. But like I think it's like those times when we are the villain in somebody's story, it's like just like any like movie, right? It's like it's there to like hopefully you get to a point where you can reflect on like any damage that you've caused, you know, so that you can turn yourself into the hero of your own story. You know, and if you have enough humility to go back and say like I'm sorry, like for the damage I've caused, like you regain your humanity, and it's like you're able to give yourself the grace to grow. Because it's like we keep like if we don't acknowledge our humanity, we keep ourselves like in this loop of like certain behaviors, because we don't understand that like as humans we have range.
Yeah. Well, I really want to point out that polar effect because it's true, right? Like, and I, there's other perspectives too that I have where it's like, oh, if I believe this, that means that this is also true, right? So it's like you can't have one without the other, just like the yin and the yang. right? So it's like you are constantly telling yourself one thing, that means that you must believe the other thing as well.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So even with like the villain of the story, like, so are you saying that for us, so are you kind of saying like we are the villain in people's stories? Like that's just like a matter of fact, right? Like it just
At
happens.
some point, right? Like
Uh,
setting a boundary and saying, like, I'm going to put this example, right? I think, and like respectfully, right? And I've already had these
go for
conversations
it.
with my mom, but
Yeah.
I've broken my mom's heart in so many different ways in the last 3 years,
Uh-huh.
right? And in reality, like the moment I became like, I want to say like the moment I turned 18,
Uh-huh.
I don't think a year has gone by that I haven't broken my mom's heart, right? But it was because I came to a realization that I was like, I'm sorry, like that and I told her straight up, like, I'm so sorry that I'm going to disappoint you because
Mm,
everything you want me to be
yeah.
does not resonate with who I am inside.
Okay. Yeah.
And like I can remember the very first boundary, like, or one of the most recent boundaries that I placed, right,
Um.
was like, if we're going to have like a discussion when we're if like a heated discussion, right, where like we're gonna discuss a disagreement,
Um.
don't do not raise your voice at me. Like
Mm,
I will shut down the moment you raise your voice at me,
okay.
and I won't engage in this conversation until
Um.
you bring down your tone of voice, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Like 3 weeks, and I keep in mind, like I always bring up boundaries not in the middle of like a heated moment. I always
Um.
introduce the boundary when like we're neutral,
Okay. That's
right?
good.
When
Yeah.
like
Because when it's heated, it's like people
right,
take it in so many
I
different ways.
right.
It did.
I'll wait for a moment where it's like everything's just neutral when I introduce a boundary, so
Um.
that when the moment comes, because it will come,
Yeah.
the expectation and the boundary is already placed, right? So
Okay.
I probably placed that boundary, I kid you not, like, let's say for example, like 2 weeks ago.
Um.
For the sake of the example, she called me yesterday
Uh.
and she's asking me to do something. And she just said it so fast that I was like, wait, what? And that
Uh.
was my tone, like, wait, what? And she was like, why? She like pops off on me. And I was like, all I was asking for was clarification. I asked
Yep.
you not to yell at me.
I feel like I
No,
know
no,
what
no,
you
I'm
mean.
lying. I'm lying. I said, why are you screaming? All I asked was for clarification. She hung up on me.
Mm.
And I'm like, you're pissed. Like you're big
Yeah.
mad that like I called you out on something I
Yeah.
asked you to correct for
So
the
it's kind of
sake.
like, so
Go
it's
ahead.
like in that space, it's like you're in a way like being a villain in
To
her
her,
eyes.
she thinks I'm like a bad child, right? Like I'm a
Okay.
bad
Yeah.
child because
Yeah.
I'm calling her out and she's my mom and I'm not supposed to. We're
Yeah.
taught like being like Hispanic, any like um oh, and I hate saying this because like we're not a minority, but like ethnic backgrounds, right?
Yeah.
We're taught to not disrespect our
Yeah.
parents.
Or
And
yeah.
it's like, I'm sorry, like I'm not disrespecting you. I'm reinforcing a boundary that I placed. And if
Yeah.
you love me, if you respect me,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you honor that? You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I so yeah, so going back to the villain, right? Because I'm so curious to know more about like because there is truth in that where like in everybody's eyes at some point or in our life like we are looked as like a bad person,
mhm,
right? But being in that space like I feel like with certain people there is so much growth that can be done where it's like hey like I feel hurt because XYZ,
mhm,
and that's the space where maybe like we open up our heart or like our compassion and like we talk about it like okay like let's talk about how maybe like you felt that I was bad, right? And there's like what you said, humility and growth and this like broader perspective. But
mhm,
I also feel like there's in other relationships where it just seems like it's a dead end. You're a bad person,
mhm,
and it's like okay, like I'm just gonna accept that in your eyes I'm a bad person.
mhm. Because this is something that I learned, I believe, from like the Hood Healer. I read this from her, right?
From where?
The Hood Healer.
Okay, okay.
she said, like, because it's like we want to give people that we love the opportunity to correct their mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And the opportunity to understand us and connect with us. But sometimes people, whether consciously or subconsciously, are committed to not understanding you. And I say that, right? Because I was like, when I first read that, I was like, wait a minute, like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, the best example I could give is like, my mom and I, like, we're just completely opposite people. We have like fundamentally, like, we just believe in different things, right?
Okay.
And so it's like our whole like it's just always been this.
Always bumping heads.
But last year, after hearing like her say that, I reflected on that. I was like, okay, if people are committed to misunderstanding other people, then the opposite must be you have to commit to understanding somebody.
Okay.
And my mom and I have been working on a relationship and like improving it for the past like 2 to 3 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
And sorry, we went on a walk last year. And I just told her, I was like, you know what, like something about the things that are going on in my life now, I completely begin to understand your perspective and why you've told me the things that you've told me like growing up, right?
Yeah.
And I had to humble myself like upon my mom and just say like, I fucked up. Like, I'm sorry that I've looked at you like the enemy, like for the past like 7-8 years, when all you were trying to do was guide me.
Yeah, and like protect you.
Right. And and me and my mom knew at the time, like we weren't at a place where like we didn't even know how to start rekindling our relationship, you know?
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, I know you don't know where to start, and I know I don't know where to start, because we literally told it to each other's faces, like, I don't trust you. And
okay.
I don't feel connected to you.
Yeah.
And so I had like, we acknowledged that, right? And I told her, I was like, I know where we stand. I can't even promise you that like we're gonna become BFFs and like we're gonna
it's like best
really,
mother-daughter relationship,
right? Like there's beautiful mother-daughter relationships out there. We're working on out. And I told her, I was like, but what I can promise you is that from this night moving forward, I'm committed to understanding you and hearing you out. Whether I agree with it or not is irrelevant.
Like just listening.
It's like, I want to get to know who you are, because you're not the woman who raised me when you were 30 years old. Like my mom's hitting 60 soon, and I'm like, I know you've changed. Like you're not the same person. And
I think we forget that too about our parents. It's like we go through so much change and growth, but we forget that our parents are also going through their own personal changes and growth.
Right.
You know, like, because even with me too, it's like the same with my mom and dad. Like since I've been back from Vietnam and like when COVID hit, it seems like everything that we'd been struggling with like really hit hard during COVID. And I had therapy sessions, and in those sessions it's always like, okay, like what do you want? Like, well then say it. You know, like you want to put a boundary, then say it. Like you're so like your feelings are valid, your emotions are valid, your thoughts are valid. And just like you, like I remember one day, I was living with Carla for like the 3 months, and I had this realization like, oh, my dad's a bully to me. Like he's condescending when I talk to him, and I always took it as like, oh, he's just joking around, it's fine. Even if it hurt, or even if he was making fun of me, right? So there's this like, we were going on a walk, and I told him over the phone, I was like, you can't talk to me that way. And he was like, oh, like, I'm just joking. Like, don't take it so serious. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. You can't talk to me that way. Yeah. And he's like, oh, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to hang up the phone. That's what I did it again. Yeah, and he did it again, and I hung up the phone.
Like, you got me fucked up. Like, and respectfully, you are my parent, but you are an adult, and I'm an adult. Yeah. To respect me.
Yeah, well, I think with parents, too, it's like they forget, too, that, like, we grow out of that season of being children. Like, we become our own adults, you know? And at some point, I feel like, and I think it happens a lot with like these collective like families where we grow up so enmeshed together Like, we don't become independent from our family, we become an extension of them. And it's like, whatever they're expecting, whatever, like, we have to, like, bow down to them, even when we're, like, 50 years old.
Right.
Right? And some people, like, they do end up doing it because, as you know, like, it's so hard to break out of that cycle. So
Right.
they do end up bowing to their parents, whatever they say, until they're both elders. And
And
there's other people who, like, break the cycles, but it's like something that I've been realizing too with doing the work is like, oh, as I set my boundaries, because in that, like, that night, like, I hung up on my dad and I
mhm,
felt so fucking guilty and shitty. It's like, you don't do that to your mom or dad,
mhm.
right? But that was my boundary. And since then, he had never, like, he's never been in that space to make fun of me again.
Oh
And the same thing with my
wow.
mom, right? It's like the saying no, and we had this whole conversation about, like, no. Like, when I say no, it's a no. Like, I respect your no. Why aren't you respecting mine? Or why
Right.
do you respect everybody else's no, but not your own daughter's?
Right.
You know? And I remember we were having this conversation, and I was like, if that's the case, I was like, I don't want to be your daughter then. Like, I'm not, like,
Yeah.
respected. But it's like
Right.
the last couple of years, it's like the more I share my own boundaries and where I'm at with them and, like, what I'm willing to accept and not,
Mhm.
like, it's a struggle at first and there's, like, chaos because they think that I'm a bad person or because I'm not filling up to their, like, expectations of a good daughter. But
Mhm.
then it also comes back around where they're also growing and changing,
Mhm.
and I think in some ways they're also reflective and they
Yeah.
come back around to have the conversation.
Right.
So it's interesting because it doesn't happen overnight where it's like, okay, we're gonna talk, like, we have some shit we have to work out, and then boom, the next day, like, we're
No, this
working
shit
on
takes
it.
time.
No, it
I
does. It totally,
like
it takes, like, a
anyone who
war in a way in the household too. Like, and that's the thing. Like, we try to prevent, like, those arguments or, like, the war in the house, right?
yeah.
But it's like sometimes that is needed for us to kind of come into our own independence and for them to come into their own independence as well.
I like to anyone who's watching right now, like if you're here is because you give a shit to like change something in your life. And like she just finished saying like this is not like this shit does not happen overnight. Like
Yeah,
I've been at like I've been at my personal healing for like since 2017. I just got the
yeah,
courage to start bringing these conversations into introducing these conversations to the people closest to me, right?
yeah,
And to talk to add on how like to add on how you said like sometimes like because we come from like these ethnic backgrounds, right? Where like we're not in like and you come from you just said a really big background. If anyone comes from like a big family, like you're gonna resonate more with Nereida, right? I
mm,
am an only child from a single
mm,
mother, and I see like I all I ever wanted when I was a kid was a big family, like be a part of a big family.
mm,
The older I get, I'm like it was my blessing in this life. And it's like I am saying this to anybody who feels like pissed, right? Because I was pissed for years at the fact that I'm like I don't have anybody to look up to. I was
mm,
pissed at the adults in my life. Like I was like none of like there's nobody's shoes I want to fill. Like there's no like I have no real people like I want to be you when I grow up, you know? And I used to be
yeah,
so mad at my mom because I'm like not that I didn't want to be her when I grew up. It was just like I was angry that I was desperate for guidance, right?
mm,
And coming from like an immigrant mom, like I'm sure
yeah,
many of you guys come from immigrant parents, like our parents like got here and the ones who separated from their families to get over here, like
yeah,
they're the bravest motherfuckers in the family. You guys
yeah,
like I
yeah,
was just reminding my mom yesterday. I was
yeah,
like, I love you and I hate seeing
yeah,
how you're acting because like let me remind you, like you were courageous before I was courageous. Like
yeah.
I was like, I told her, I was like, you had more balls at like 21, 22 to
Like, we
cross
do.
over and like
Yeah.
start a life from scratch. I was like, at my grown age of like, I'm about to be 25. Like, I barely have the courage. Like, I started having the courage to be who the fuck I am unapologetically, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
It's,
Of course.
going with that too a little bit, it's like that's the part where it comes in of like we want to be understood, but we also have to be willing to understand,
Right.
right? Because it's like we are growing up so different from our families who came immigrants, right? Like our definition of like being independent is so different from their definition of being
Yeah.
independent. Like
Yeah.
our courage is different from their courage, and it's like now that I'm older, just like how you're saying, it's like, oh, and I think my mom often now, because it's like, oh, like I didn't understand this when I was a kid, now I do, and thank you.
Right.
Like, wow.
Right.
And now maybe because we're older too, like there's more open conversations where she's sharing more of her life and more of her thought process when she was younger. And
Right.
one of the things that she shared with me, like not too long ago, was like, like when I got here, like I got pregnant, like, and she was telling me her struggle. And for her was like, I just never wanted you to like live like that at a very young
Right.
age. And it's like, oh,
Can I
okay.
like I want to add just to finish the thought of like how you come from a big family and I don't, right?
Um,
Like so many of us, like so many people maybe watching come from broken families, right? Where
mm,
and we look at like where we come from sometimes from a like poor me, like why did I get handed like these cards in life, right?
mm,
The biggest mindset shift, right? Because all of what we're talking about, like for anybody who's listening right now, it's like what we're what we're sharing, it's like, and we're trying to teach, it's like you don't change, you shift perspective, which is like the catalyst to change, right? You have to shift your perspective. Like you're here, we're trying to get you there. And my old perspective was like boo hoo me and my life, and like I don't have like the best role models growing up. I don't have people's footsteps to follow. I don't have shoes to
mm.
fill. I used to beg my mom, like, tell me what to be when I grow up. Like, I
Oh,
want, like, tell me,
yeah.
please, like, make it easier for me. Tell me what you want me to be when I grow up. And she would just tell
Oh,
me, like,
yeah.
I want you to be whoever you are.
Oh,
She's like,
she
I
was
can't.
so open.
She was like, she's like, I can't tell you like who you're gonna be when you grow up. Like, you got to decide that for
Yeah.
yourself. And so remembering that, I realized because I've just observed so many big families, right?
Yeah.
My biggest fucking blessing was not having shoes to fill.
Mm.
Like
Because you get to
I
fill your own shoes. Like you get to
right.
create your own shoes.
Like I'm like my mom, like, and my mom was very hard on herself for a while too, and even recently,
Oh.
like she's still hard on herself of like, I'm sorry I didn't do more for you. And I'm like,
Oh.
no, I was like, you don't get it. Like
Yeah.
you gave like the fact that like you didn't place like you didn't place career expectations on me or life expectations. She placed her own like marital expectations on
Of
me, but
course.
that's like
That's like
I could deal with that, like whatever. She didn't place any like career or life expectations on me, and I'm like, that was the best gift you could have given me ever, because
mm,
you've allowed me to have like a blank, like you gave me essentially a blank canvas. And if anyone who's watching can like who is like oh like is feeling like, oh, I don't have like a family unit to look up to and like to learn from,
yeah.
guess what, that's your job then. Go look on the internet because it's free
Yeah.
99.
Yeah.
Go look for couples that like embody qualities, like, and I'm not
You
saying like
desire.
yeah, I'm not saying
Yeah.
like copy paste it, because every person needs like their own like specific formula for their life. Like
Yeah.
figure out what you value. If you didn't have the example on how to build a family unit, guess what, that's your job. Go figure it out for yourself.
I
If you
agree.
didn't have any role models for like a career, like guess what, that's your job. Figure
Go
that shit
figure
out
it
for
out.
yourself. Like there's too
Yeah.
many lit people on the internet for you to not learn from them. Like whoever you want
Yeah.
to become, there's someone on the internet doing it. Take some
Yeah.
fucking notes and apply it to yourself and make your situation better. And guess what? It's your fucking challenge in this lifetime
Yeah.
to become the
Yeah.
blueprint for your family. Become the blueprint of your own life, you know?
Yeah.
And
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 it's
that was
and
the
even like with that too, it's like figure out what it is too.
yes, like
Like it's
I
also
wanted
like
to
listening to ourselves, because even in that space of like going to do research and like trying to find the person that like you want to look up to, or that you want to get qualities that you desire or like learn from or grow from, it's like also figure out what you want to do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
not because you mentioned like your mom gave you like a white canvas, right?
Mm-hmm.
For so many families, like there's also this like pressure to be this, to be that, to this, to
Mm-hmm.
do this, and they lose like their own voice of their own desire or like their own dream. So
Right.
it's like figure that out. Like aside from like everybody else's like perspective and what you should be or what you shouldn't be, it's
Mm-hmm.
like zone in on your own shit
Yeah.
and then go out and do it. Like go
Right.
look for it. It's there. It's totally there.
I
It's
think this
reachable.
is the perfect segue to get into how we came to become the lit bitches that we are. Like finding how we came to like finding our sole purpose, you know, like finding
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah. Oh my god. Super down. So with the lives, I don't know how long they go for. I usually do them for 45 minutes and we're
Okay.
past the 45 minutes.
Okay. It
But
got
I'm
lit.
super
That's
down
why.
to keep talking about it and then we'll see how that goes.
Wait, are you recording this? Or
No,
on
so you know how this works? Like when I end my tea times, I
uh-huh.
can post it right away.
Oh, okay, cool, cool,
But
cool, cool, cool.
it's
Okay.
only 45 minutes, right? So I don't know if it'll let me post it past 45 minutes, and I'm sure it will. But
Well,
just
whatever, we'll get back on. It's fine.
okay. Okay.
Okay, so let's get into, do you want to share
Yeah.
the post that you said? Okay, how are you?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
let
this
me
is how Adriana and I got into like wanting to do this tea time together was because we found this, I posted it and we were like, "Oh my god, like this resonates so well with like our lives and our journey." So this
I
is
I want to just add, like, I love that you're the cool, calm, collected. And like the more excited I get, it's like, oh, I'm turning up the levels. Like I'm
It's funny that you're saying I'm cool, calm, and collected because I feel like sometimes I'm so sporadic.
no,
Oh
I
my
like
god.
I'm hearing your tone of voice and you're just like you got this like and I'm like
I love it though. Bring it, bring it. This is where we need it.
okay,
It's so
go
funny.
ahead.
Like I went because I work with kids right now. Like I'm life coaching little kids, and one of the mom was like, "Oh, because I had my nails painted, right?" And she was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
can you see your nails? Like they look so pretty." And I'm like, "Well, they're a little messed up. Like I'm really impatient."
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "You impatient?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." But afterwards, I was thinking because I was like, "Oh, she sees me as patient." And I'm
Mm-hmm.
over here like I'm impatient about this and like this and like this, but yeah.
Okay, you're saying you're mentoring like coaching young kids. It's so crazy that you're saying that because like the most beautiful fucking person that I connected with yesterday. She's
Um,
telling me how she works with people too, you know? And
um,
she is like, you're a certified uh life coach. She is like she went to school for sociology and behavioral therapy.
mm.
I graduated from YouTube University, Twitter University. Like you know what I
I
mean? Like
love
I'm just
it.
passionate about learning these things, and I listen to like my inner voice of like, oh, that's what I need to learn next, right?
um,
Okay, like I'm asking for your like professional advice. I go on runs every afternoon, like around 11 or around 11 and 12. And we have this little neighbor and I basically go on like long runs, like endurance kind of type runs, right?
um,
Um, and like I know now we have like, I know now that they're new neighbors, right? But there's this
um.
little boy on like 3 houses down from where I live who like, he trains every day. Like when I'm running, he's like,
Oh.
he has his soccer jersey and he's doing abs and he's like just playing by himself. And like, I know he's seen me run now. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, like, you want to go run with me? Like, we can run
That's so
together.
cute.
But I'm like, how do I do that without being a fucking creep? Like, I was like, okay, maybe. I'm like, is
That's
that
like your
weird?
inner child. This is so
Because
adorable.
like I just remember being like an only child and being by myself all the time and wanting someone to play with me. And I remember
Yeah.
this one aunt. She's like an adoptive aunt. She used to play hopscotch with me. She played
Oh,
hopscotch with me on her wedding day.
that's so
She
sweet.
drew on the floor like with chalk and she played in her wedding dress was like play hopscotch.
Oh,
And it's like I love her. Like I don't even talk to her anymore, but it's like I love her because I have that memory that I have with her, you know. And I'm like, I see the
yeah.
little boy doing crunches. He puts his jersey on the floor on the grass, and so it doesn't hurt his back, I think. And he's doing
He's
crunches.
like
I'm
all
like,
into it.
let's train together. Like I need abs too.
Oh, it's like you guys can help each other. Like he'll coach you, you'll coach him.
Right. I think he has to be like 7 or 8, but I'm like, how do I do this without being like a
Okay.
weirdo? I'm like, maybe I'll share like all my socials with his parents and be like, here's my phone number. I live right here. This is who I am. Like, you know, but
I
I
think
don't
it's
know.
like I think just asking him, but also like making sure his parents are aware of it
Right.
too. You know, or asking him like, hey, like, would you like to go running? Like, where are your mom and
Yeah.
dad? Like, where's your mom and dad?
Right.
Yeah, and the same thing, like, like giving them your information so they know that you're like a
Not
trustworthy person.
right. But okay, so let's get into this
Okay, so let
finding
me
our
read
soul
this.
purpose.
Let's see. So it's from Rewilding for Women, and it starts off with why finding your soul purpose is so fucking hard.
Amen.
Yeah, so finding your soul purpose is not just one unchanging thing, it's a moving target. So you have to learn to evolve along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Finding your soul purpose is about learning to clearly hear which direction your soul is calling you in and
Mm-hmm.
finding the courage to trust it.
Amen.
Yep. Finding your soul purpose requires seeing beyond the desires of your ego, which wants you to do something acceptable, valuable, impressive in the eyes of your family and society. Finding your soul purpose means facing all the fears you have about stepping fully into your authentic boldness, authentic power, authentic light, no matter what others think. Amen.
Amen.
Find your soul purpose isn't going to happen in just one meditation, it's a lifelong process.
Amen times 2.
Finding your soul purpose is a process of recommitting over and over again to your own soul longings, no matter what anyone else says. Finding your soul purpose requires practice, perseverance, I think I said that right, and most of all, courage. It's hard, but let's do it anyways. Yeah. So it's like fuck yeah. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I read this and I was like going through it, and it's like, fuck yes, fuck yes, fuck yes. But okay, so I wanted
Yes,
to
on yes,
ask
on
you,
yes.
yeah. But because, so one, I wanted to ask you, like, what is, like, a soul purpose to you? Like, what does that mean to you?
See, I want to give you guys the what I thought it was and what I think it is now, right?
Okay.
I used to think that like our sole purpose was like I confused it often for what I confused it for like my job had to be my purpose.
Okay, like
You
your job
understand?
as in like, just like any type of job?
Like I always thought it was going to be like I was going to find my purpose in my job. Like that's
Okay.
what kept me from um like and I'm gonna give like a brief example, right?
Um,
Freaking frown lines, bro.
at this
When I
point, I'm
was
like, I think it's just freaking age.
no, I don't want that like double line in the middle of my face. Um
We'll go get Botox together.
just here. That's it. I used to like when I was young, all right, I thought I was like, I want to be a dermatologist. My purpose in life is to make sure people have beautiful skin because I hate my skin, you know?
Uh,
And whatever, like I was wrong, you know? What and so it's like I used to think that it was like my job was going to lead me to my purpose.
okay.
And at least for myself, right? Because like we have size this. Hold on, my phone is about to die. I and like where I'm at now and what I can explain as like how I found my soul purpose was the first thing I did was confront everything I was running away from. And I locked myself in last year for an entire month. And I faced everything that I was running away from that I didn't want to admit to myself. Like I was in a very, very deep state of denial that had been my just state of living for years.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't want to acknowledge the pain that existed inside of me. So
Okay.
during that month that I locked myself in, it's like I forced myself to face everything, like every hurt, every betrayal, every self-betrayal. Like I made myself feel it. Like I forced myself. Like I'm like, oh, I really hope my mom's not watching. I used to like I used to like self I used to self-medicate with like weed, right?
Okay.
When I was self-medicating. And
hey, it's okay though. Eventually they'll find out. You know, I told my parents like a couple months ago that I tried mushrooms and acid. Don't know if they know what that is, but my mom was like, oh, nothing surprises me from you anymore. And my dad was like, I think you never do anything good. And
right.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I cut myself off like cold turkey because I was before like the night before I decided to cut cold turkey. I literally went into a really dark mental place. Like, and it had gotten to a point where like the pain that I was feeling was no longer, I couldn't numb it anymore. Like it was literally like slapping me in the face. Like either you're going to pay attention to me or like I'm going to defeat you. And I remember journaling like that last night. And it's like, if I pull up my journal, like my writing scribbles away. Cause like internally I wanted to fade away. And it was deep. It was deep as fuck. Like it was dark. I was in a very dark place for a month. And and so the next day I was like, you're out of my life. Like I'm cutting cold turkey. I forced myself to feel everything that I was feeling. And I just started journaling everything that I've ever felt I denied was like had happened to me. I wrote out every way that I felt somebody or people in my life let me down. I wrote every way I let myself down. I let every single way that everything that I could fucking think of, like every hurt thing that I ever experienced, I wrote it out on the journal. And I kid you not, like that entire month, I woke up crying. I went to sleep. I cried myself to sleep. Like I was broken, like legitimately, like so broken. And what sucked is like, I don't think I had to be broken for as long as I was, because had I just like right now I know this. I would have like, and this is what I'm saying to anybody who is running from anything that's going on. Like, you know, what you're running from, right? Get the courage to run towards it. Like you're not a victim of any of the things that like have happened to you, like, but you're allowing yourself to be the victim when you run from it, because you're letting it chase you. And it's like all those things, chase it back.
You know, like with that being said too, like something that I want to share, because it is so hard to run towards it, right? Like we have so many like reasons why we don't, right? And one of the things that I got in touch with a couple months ago was like this deep loneliness that I've had for years.
All my lonely people, you listening?
Hey, this message is for you. Okay, so it's a loneliness that I had for all my life, and I was in therapy, right? Like for 2 years, and it was expressed in therapy here and there. And the last, like, what is it, a couple months ago, I really got in touch with it. But one of the reasons why I also allowed myself to go in there is because my therapist said one thing. She was like, something along the lines of like, we think we're running from it. Like, we think that we're not in it. We think that we're not like living through it. And we have all these like fears that if we step into it, then we're going to be like a negative person, a heavy person, a sensitive person, like that we're really going to feel lonely. Like we don't know what loneliness is, right? But she was like, you've been feeling it all your life. Like, if
Oh,
you step into it, it's not something that it's new. Like, you've been feeling it. It's been with you,
just
and
embrace
everything.
it.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
It's like everything has been manifesting because I feel lonely. The people pleasing is one of them, right? The relationships that I've been in is one of them. So she was like, like you have nothing to lose, like in a way. And
No,
that was just like an aha
absolutely.
moment for me because it's like, oh shit, like that's so true. Like, because one of my fears with stepping into it was, well, if I step into this loneliness, like the depths of this loneliness, am I just gonna feel it for months? Like, am I gonna get depressed? Like,
That's what
I
I
don't
was
know if I
scared.
want to go through those seasons. And when she said that, I was like, oh. And in that moment when she said that, it seemed like I saw all the glimpses of how the loneliness manifested through my life. And I was like, oh my God, yeah. Let's do
Like
this
you can
shit.
be surrounded by, because how it manifests, because it's like, now that you're saying, I'm like, shit, like I did that shit to myself too. And I'm sure some of you guys are doing it to yourselves. Like,
Yeah.
you are so desperate for not wanting to feel lonely
Lonely.
that you're surrounding yourself with these hollow bodies because they don't give a fuck about you. Because if they
With
did,
people,
you would
it,
never feel lonely.
yeah. Well, it's like you're surrounding yourself with people who don't make you feel so fully aligned or like,
Seen, like heard.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Um,
Like that's the manifestation of it.
right,
And we
right.
keep blaming like that it's other people when part of it is like we're also in that space and we're allowing it to come into our life as well.
Yep. Yep.
So that was such an aha moment for me.
Oh my
Like, oh
gosh.
shit.
The what you're saying of like feeling it, right? Like I am fucking blessed that like my man is my man, because
Aw.
a month, like I got myself out of a depressive episode about 2.5 months ago.
Um,
I had just come back from Mexico, and before I left to Mexico, I had acknowledged, I was like, oh fuck, like I'm in this state again, and I hadn't been this dark in years. Like I'm talking like 2006, or yeah, 2016. Like I
um,
could not, I've probably died spiritually 3 times in the last year. I've had like
oh my
spiritual
god, so many
death.
spiritual
Bro,
like the what is
I'm
it like
fucking
the
tired.
ego death? You've
No,
been
not
going through
even,
like
I don't even think it's an ego death yet. It's just I've killed old, like I tweeted this like last year. I was like, if you knew me, that bitch is dead. You don't know me.
like she no longer exists.
Right. Um and my boyfriend's like the realest person on fucking earth, and
Oh.
he and I like he picked me up like after I came back from Mexico, and I'm like, he's like, what's, like, you're off considering you just came back from your being with your family. And I was like, I started crying. I was like, I'm so tired. And I was like, I'm tired of feeling tired. I'm tired of this feeling. And he was like, say it.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I started bawling my eyes out, and I'm like,
Oh.
no, like I don't want to be here. Like I've been here before, and I just know it's like what you said, like I knew how long I was in that state, and I refused to go back to it. And he goes,
Yeah.
the moment you say it out loud, you give it less control over you.
Oh my
And
god,
I
there's
was
so much
like,
truth in it.
I like
Yeah.
pounded into the bed. I was like, I'm fucking depressed. I was like, and I don't want to be depressed. And he
Yeah.
was like, you got to take it day by day. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have the energy right now to like look at the big picture. He's like, all I need you to do is take on tomorrow. Like, if you
Yeah.
can
That's so
take on
sweet. Like he's
tomorrow,
reminding you of like
right.
being in the
And
present moment day by day.
right. So, like, quickly bringing it back to like what led me up to understanding like my soul purpose, I had to face everything that I was running away from, and kept denying had once like damaged me, like it's like I wasn't, I was just overflowing in hurt. And I ended
Yeah.
up journaling everything, like every traumatic event that I had ever fucking been through. And it felt better. I felt better, right? I'm not
Mm.
gonna lie, I felt better.
Yeah.
And what I would do is like because this was like 1 month I was locked in. Like nobody saw me. Like I lost 5 pounds in one week. No, I lost 10 pounds in 1 week because I didn't have an appetite. When I resurfaced, everybody was like, where the fuck have you been?
Yeah,
like why are you like, why do you look like this? Like my best friend, she was like, she would call me like, what did you eat today? And I'm like,
oh, like checking up on you.
Yeah, and like she would be like, I'm gonna take you out to lunch, and we would go, and I'd be like, I'll have a fry. And like, and I was like, so every night I journaled, right? I journaled all the hurt. I journaled. And like, and I was just raw with it. I like every fucking feeling, because it's like, even as I've learned to journal better, I've gotten more real with myself about what I'm actually feeling. Like I used to, like when I first started journaling, I was like, I had a great day. Period. With the heart.
Like,
you get what I'm saying?
And behind you're like, I had a shitty ass day.
Right. Or if it was a shitty day, I'd be like, today sucked. Like very superficial, you know? And I'm like, no, bitch, like get deep in it, like get deep. And I forced myself to get deep, and I was like, this is what I went through. This is how it felt. This is how I experienced it. And every morning what I would do is I would read it, right? Because it's like, now I have fresh energy. I'm looking at this, and it's like, I would look at it like, that was me last night. I'm a new person this morning. And every morning I read like what I journaled the night before. And during this time, I was also working on developing like my business. And like with anything in life, right? Like I'm a true believer that like, if your why isn't deep enough, you won't commit to the things that you want.
Like your intention.
Yeah, like like that shit gotta be deep. Like I hope you guys are deep, and like if you're here listening, it's like welcome. We're in the deep water right now, you know.
Talk about soul purpose.
Right. I admitted to myself, like, I want to be a fashion designer. Like the only reason I ever told myself I didn't want to be a fashion designer was because I never saw anybody who looked like me be one.
Be a fashion designer.
Like, and that's the reality of it, right? So in my journaling, I tried to understand where it was that dream of mine died. Okay. And I tried to remember why I wanted it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Like not why I want it now. Like why did I want it when I was a kid?
Yeah, because when you're a kid, you don't have so many layers of like your fear, your doubt, your uncertainty. Yeah.
And I remembered that the reason why I wanted to be a designer was because I wasn't like a fat kid when I was little, but I was always thicker. Like I was just like, I mean, you remember me, like I was just bigger than the average kid, you know? And like I remember shopping at Limited too, and like the clothes was just like, it was just too small, like and not in a way where it's like I wasn't like, I really wasn't this huge kid, you know, but it's like and then it's like I didn't fit that clothes, but I also didn't fit like the juniors clothes, and then like the kids clothes was too kiddish for my liking, you know, and like the junior clothes was too like grownish for like my mom's approval. I remember like when I was a kid, I would think like, why isn't there like just a fun clothes that's like right in the middle? But on top of that, I remembered like, well, where did I learn to hate my body? Like, and where did I learn to like fear wearing certain things? And I recognized like watching my mom try new clothes on in fitting rooms, and her telling herself like, oh, I can't wear this color because I'm too dark for it. Or like, I'm
so it's like you learned it from your mom.
Yeah, like I'm fat, like I can't wear this print, right?
Yeah.
But I remember like we used to walk, like we used to go to like a Lane Bryant store, which is like a plus size store for like middle-aged to older women. And I would see my mom, and my mom's kind of petite, you know, and she has more of like a belly than like and arms than anything else. And I would just see her like she wouldn't cry in front of me, but I recognized how much it hurt her to go shopping. Like,
yeah.
and as a kid, like seeing like something that like when you're little, like I used to look at my mom like, you're beautiful.
Yeah, like you don't see the imperfections that she sees on herself.
No.
Yeah.
And I used to tell her like, try, because it's like I naturally had an eye for things. Like when I was a kid, like I devoured fashion magazines and like fashion shows and I would tell her like, try this on, like this color is gonna look so good on you, like, or this color is in season. Like I was 6, 7, 8 doing this for my mom.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm trying it on for you, but like I'm telling you right now, like it's not gonna look good on me. And so many times, like we would walk out of like stores, and I just remember promising her like,
Aww.
when I grow up, Mom, I'm gonna design clothes like for women like you to wear.
Aww.
But like it was deep. It's like that's where it started.
Yeah.
But I see it like so with so many women in my life, you know, like I've always like loved playing like like I always loved being like my friend's stylist, makeup artist, like all of that, you know, and like highlighting their beauty to them, like you look so good in this, like why have you never tried this out, like let me like I'd be like, you know what, like you're like who you are outside is not matching who you are on the inside, let me shush you up, you know.
Yeah.
And like, how do you know how to recognize, like how do you see that? And when I was younger, I was like, I don't know, I just know, like I
You just know, it's like intuitive feeling.
And like I'm like, hey Wendy was my most recent model, you know, and like my friend Wendy, like too, like I feel like there's been moments where like I've told her, I'm like, try this on, like trust me, this is gonna look great on you, and she like, and just all my friends at some point they're like, but no, like that doesn't look good on me for X reason. I'm like, try it the fuck on, because like you're gonna look bomb, I promise you, like trust me, I know what I'm talking about, like I can help you with this, you know. So I dug deep because I was like, I love fashion, but I don't love it for my selfish gain enough, right? And I was digging deep, like what is, and keeping this into the conversation of like your sole purpose, right? When I reflected on the journal entries, I was like, it came to me like an aha, because I've been doing this YouTube, I've been like just trying to talk like about empowering people, you know. And I'm like, okay, deep in my heart, I didn't even recognize it as a sole purpose yet. I looked at it like, deep in my heart, I fucking love empowering women, like, and having them recognize their own beauty. You get what I'm saying? Like, and like their beauty beyond the physical. Like that's what I fucking love most. Like my friends, like they used to call me like, you're such a compliment whore. Like you're like
compliment whore.
Yeah, like you just give anyone compliments. And I was like, because you don't know what that compliment is gonna do to that person. Like, and because if I think that person, whatever the,
it's like, why not say it?
Right, like like you're gonna stare at them anyways. Compliment them. Don't be a fucking weirdo. You're gonna say, like, don't be fucking weird.
Whenever I see people too, like if it comes out, like it doesn't even come across not to share it. I'm just like, hey.
Like, I can't help but stare at people. Like I love wearing glasses because I love looking at people, and like it blocks my eyes, you know. But I love like admiring people, and so like if I feel myself looking at someone a little too long, I'm like, you look really good.
I love it. Look at Veronica, because I want to point, like, this is so true. Veronica says, you do always hype your friends up. Wendy, literally the #1 hype woman. Yes, totally agree. Totally fucking agree. Every single time I talk to Adriana over the phone and I share something, she hypes the shit up. And I'm like, after the phone call, I'm like, I can do it. Like,
no, because every fucking one
Yeah.
of you can. Like, you guys are all that person. Like,
Yeah.
I believe in you, you know? Like, I want, like, me and her, we do this for you guys. Like,
Yeah.
we just get the fucking benefits that this helps us heal at the same time.
Yeah.
But it's like, I ask the
It's
people.
it's what
Go
you're
ahead.
saying too. It's like when you're growing up, like you wish you had some kind of guidance. Like you wish you had somebody to look up to, you know? And it's like everything that I'm sharing on social media, it's like I wish I heard that at some point. Like even the idea of like following your dreams, your passions, like the healing, it's like it's also not an easy journey. Like it's not all about rainbows and butterflies and like positive vibes. And it's like I'm going through their journey. I've been through their journey, and for me to share it with somebody else and say, "Hey, like it's not easy, but it's so worth it," or "Hey, it's not
And
easy, but like I'll be with
doable.
you." Like
Like, you
I'll,
can do it.
yeah,
You
it,
can do it.
yeah. Like one is like you can do it, but also for me, the other one is like you're also not alone in it. Like whether it's me
Me.
next to you or me messaging you or whether it's somebody else, like you're not alone in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and for me it's also like I've always been such a huge person when it comes to like follow your dreams, you
Mm-hmm.
know, like you can do it, like I can do it, and always like sharing with others like you can do it, that's a dream of yours, like why not?
Mm-hmm.
But like the more I get into like the life coaching and being in those sessions with people, it's like, oh, for some people like it's not easy, like
Mm-hmm.
there's so much fear, there's so much doubt that is so truth in their body, and
Mm-hmm.
they can move past it,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's like, oh, and it's like when we're talking about like this teacher student, we're even in those spaces, like I'm also learning, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like shit comes out for me of like, oh, like I have that fear too actually, like let me
Mm-hmm.
go work on that,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And like the life purpose too, like where you're sharing, for me was always like I don't really think I knew about soul purpose until I
Mm-hmm.
started to do like the healing work. For me it
Mm-hmm.
was always like, even like in high school was like, okay, I want to be a counselor, okay, I want to be an attorney because it makes good money. Like I
Okay.
was always changing like the career, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I did like human communications like in college, and then
Mm-hmm.
afterwards my friend Carla and I were like, well now what, right? Like what do we do now? And that
Mm-hmm.
kind of sparked like the self-development, the spiritual journey, like the healing journey.
Right.
And something that I told you yesterday that I also wanted to share with like the soul purpose, where it doesn't happen overnight, right? Is that I remember her and I having like this desire of wanting to help people. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
know how. We didn't know, like, we had no idea how that looked like. But every Tuesday, every morning, we would get together and we would make it a priority to have some tea, to meditate, to read, to do things that made us feel good. And, like, fast forward 3, 4 years, like, we're life coaching, like, we're speaking, like, we're going to these events, and it's like, oh, here it is. Like, it's present right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But with the soul purpose, like I think I really narrowed in with it once I started doing like the inner work. For me,
Right.
like because I think for soul purpose, like for me, it's like we all have a soul purpose, and it's like the foundation of everything that we do in life. And sometimes we have to figure it out as we get older. Like what you're sharing too, how you had this purpose when you were a younger kid, but through your experiences in life, like it got dampened and you forgot about it or you
Mm-hmm.
pushed it aside. And part
Mm-hmm.
of the journey is to kind of work on that stuff and kind of release it, and then bring up that soul purpose, that intention, and work on doing it and making it happen, right? So for me it's just like that too, where it's like we have that. And I also think about like life purpose, or not life purpose, yeah, life purpose, how it's also different, because I also think that our purpose changes,
Can
like,
I? Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
like some
Before we get
seasons
into
like
that,
we're, huh.
but I'm like, before we get into that, like, I just want to summarize what we just said for anybody who just jumped in. Like, hey, we're
Sure.
talking about soul purpose. Um, so I basically said, like, I had to, what helped me identify or remember a soul purpose for me was digging deep into my pain. Like,
Mm.
that was how I came to find out my soul purpose. Like, I dug into my pain, and that's what inspired me. But
Mm.
from what I'm hearing, Nareda, on the other hand, she found her soul purpose by leaning into pleasure and things you
Mm.
enjoy. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it doesn't. and the reason I highlight that is because none of, like, we can
It's
coach you. Like, we can coach you and we can give you resources. You have to put in the work and find your soul. Like, we don't, no one knows you better than you know you.
But I want to say that too because it's so true. There's so much truth to what you said about delving deep into your pain, right? Because even though Carla and I started doing this stuff out of pleasure, right? Like, what makes us feel good? Or, like, hey, we're going to read this and we're going to talk about it. We also started a journey on getting into our deepest pain, right? Like, we both started when COVID hit a little bit before, we started doing, like, the trauma work. And with that, it seemed like, okay, we were on this path, right? Like, teacher, public speaker. We started the trauma journey, and then it became, like what you said, being aware of all the pain, right? And even before, it's like being aware of all the fears and really giving it space. And then it seemed like the purpose became more sharpened of like, oh, I want to heal people. Like, oh, I want to be able to give that space to other people to also feel their pain, process it, and go through it to their own purpose. You know? So I do feel like the going into your pain is like a huge factor.
Yeah.
Oh, she froze. Can you guys still see us? Ooh, can you hear me? You did freeze, yeah. Yeah. But like I did a oh, you're frozen. You keep freezing. Oh, can you guys still hear? Okay, well just to finish that like sentence is like there's so much truth in it too, and I did a video yesterday about it where it's like to move forward in our goals and our dreams and like creating new relationships. Oh, okay. Oh no, Adriana left. Okay. Hey guys. um Let me see if I can add her. Maybe she's gonna pop in. But again, just to finish that sentence is like in order to move forward with finding our purpose, creating new relationships, creating new or stepping into like our dreams or desires, even like those dreams that we had as a little kid, it's like we have to give space to all the fear and to the pain, you know? Uh, let's see. Okay. I wonder if she's gonna log in again. But yeah, if you guys have any comments or any questions, feel free to comment. I'm gonna wait for a little bit and see if she pops up. But yeah, going back to the post, like I'll share it on social media because again, like every single slide, I was like, fuck yes, fuck yes, fuck yes. And going back a little bit to like the life purpose, I do think that life purpose changes as we go through different seasons in our lives, but also our soul purpose stays the same. And I see it as like the soul purpose being like the foundation, and then our life purposes kind of like changing through it. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if she's gonna come back in. Maybe her phone died. But yeah. Okay. So so I'm gonna end the tea time with what's it called? Like a little passage from the book that I read earlier when tea time started, and it's from this book called A Course in Miracles, and I really do feel like it relates to our whole conversation. And I read it and I was like, fuck yes, another fuck yes to something that I read, and it talks about perception, and this is how it goes. Perception is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, organizing and reorganizing, shifting and changing. So yeah, sit with it for a while and see what comes up, like contemplate with it. But yeah, I think part of our finding our life purpose, our soul purpose, is also having like an open perspective with everything that happens in life and listening to our heart's desires and working on it, doing the work. So yeah. Okay, thank you guys for joining, and I hope to see you guys soon. So much love.